Unshelling Medicine Podcast. Healthcare in the language we understand.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. So thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to discuss the brain. Yes, the brain again, the one superpower that we have. And I am so delighted to have Dr. Loretta with me today. And we are going to tap into utilizing the happy part of our brain to the fullest potential. So the conversation is starting off that we have more power to our happy brain chemicals than we realize. So if you're like the average human, where you find sometimes you need to pull together, you may learn something, and you will definitely learn something. So join this conversation. Let us know what you think. Listen in, learn something, and teach somebody something else. So welcome. Hi, Dr. Loretta. It's great to have you.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you again. So let's talk about the happy brain chemicals. I mean, we have things that kind of touch on those happy centers from time to time, and we're kind of sort of satisfied with that for the most part. So how can we access that more? You say we have more power, to access them. How can one do that?
So first, we have to be realistic. Our happy chemicals are not meant to be on all the time.
Okay.
So if you imagine our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they were hungry and they could only eat if they found food. So when they found food, they were happy. But if the happy chemicals were on all the time, then it couldn't do their job of getting your attention when you see an opportunity.
Right.
So that like, wow, here's a good opportunity. That's not meant to be on all the time. So we should not be expecting it all the time. We should not think other people are having it all the time. We should not think we're depressed if we don't have it all the time. So I think that's the first place to start is, to have realistic expectations.
Right. So let's talk about not having it all the time and thinking the worst of. So do you believe that the world of instant gratification, especially with social media, is not really helping us in that regard, where people really hone in and focus on the happy part of their lives, and that is kind of like really magnified, and where people kind of like compare where they are and where other people are showing off?
So people have always been competitive and sucked into social comparison long before social media. Right. So I've studied the social comparison of monkeys. I was amazed to learn this. Like, nobody teaches you this in psychology because it's sort of upsetting. Right. But monkeys and cows and birds, they all have social hierarchies. Lions, like even mice, I mean, they compete and they feel good when they win. And we have inherited a brain that does this. Now, monkeys avoid conflict by staying out of the way of a stronger individual. And how do they know that? Because they compare themselves to others. And when they see that this is a bigger individual, they're like, well, I'm not going to get in their way. I'm not going to steal their banana. And that's what we call the stress chemical that's released. Like when I see that somebody's stronger than me in my own mind, then I release this bad chemical. So I've created that whole drama myself. I think this person has better nails than me, or a better husband than me, or a better house than me, or whatever. And I'm releasing that chemical and making myself feel bad. If I know that I've done that, I can just relax about it and know that everybody else is doing the same thing. And in the monkey world, they want to look for an opportunity to be in the position of strength so that they could get the banana. So our brain is always looking for an opportunity of like, how can I be the person with the better nails or the better house or the better husband or whatever? We're creating it all ourselves. And it's hard to stop doing it because it is what our brain naturally does. But when you know that you're doing it yourself, then you know that you have the power to relax it rather than just feeling like it's forced on you.
Okay. And what would it take for a person to realize it themselves? The reason I'm asking is that we all have very different intrinsic compasses, right? Some are stronger than others. Some people can, snap out of things quite easily. Others kind of like need, a process, to get out of it, like step 1 through 10. So how can a person, who's listening to us realize that I think this is like self-manufactured and I kind of like need to relax about this? What are those cardinal maybe tools or triggers to watch out for?
Sure. So first, I'll give you something that I learned from a person who helps people stop smoking. So when a person feels bad and they want to turn to a cigarette, we all have that habit of when I feel bad, what is that thing I turn to? And the way that most people try to stop it is with negative thoughts like, oh, you're going to die if you smoke, or you're going to die if you keep eating that junk food. And that just adds more negative thoughts. And that just makes you want the cigarette or the junk food or the social media even more. So the bottom line is to build a healthy, happy habit. A healthy, happy habit is something you can do to feel better that's healthier than what you're already doing. So one thing I like to do is to listen to comedy. So whenever I feel bad, it's something I can always access. And when I do that repeatedly, then the next time I have a pathway in my brain that says, oh, you're feeling bad, why don't you take a break and listen to some comedy? Now, a cigarette just lasts for 5 minutes, and you could just listen to comedy for 5 minutes. Everybody could find something they like to do for 5 minutes. And another thing I suggest that really worked for me, I watched a lot of nature videos, and I watched the way monkeys are fighting with each other and giraffes are fighting with each other and zebras are fighting with each other. And it helped me say, whoa, this is what our nonverbal brain is creating.
Yeah, I like that. Replace the negative thought with something positive. So talking about fighting monkeys, giraffes, and zebras and everybody else, right? When it comes to happy and sad or conflict in the brain, what has been in your study, the correlation or the similarities with conflict resolution, right? Within, say, that community of monkeys or zebras, you name it. You did mention that earlier, that monkeys kind of like size up each other, and if they see that another monkey is bigger in size or stature or whatever, they kind of like, okay, that's not the guy I want to go up against. However, there is some conflict that happened within monkeys in the same weight class, for lack of a better explanation. So what has been your observation when these conflicts do happen, and we're talking about chemicals in the brain, all driven by chemicals in the brain, the correlation with conflict resolution within a group of monkeys and also humans, especially like in a close family setting?
Sure. So I have a bunch of toddler grandchildren. So that's like a perfect in between the monkeys and like adults in an office, right? So the bottom line is that in the monkey world, they only fight when they think they can win. And most of the time, they don't have to fight because they're very good at predicting who would win. So the one who would lose just backs away. And the one who would win just has to stare him in the face, and the other one backs down. And you could sort of see toddlers doing this. The human brain is wired by experience. We have this big extra cortex here that we learn from experience. So we already start learning from experience when we're a toddler, but our experience differs. So for example, one kid can go and grab another kid's toy and hit the other kid on the head with it and get away with it, and nothing happens to them. So that brain is getting wired different from another kid. Maybe they're sharing their toy, but they still get hit on the head and bullied. And then another kid has like adults that train them with realistic manners, respect, even negotiation skills. So each brain is wired by its own past experience. Now, nobody has perfect wiring because we're all surrounded by like toddlers, So each of us will have some neural pathways that we don't like, that we arrive at adulthood, and either they create the feeling of, poor me, everybody takes my banana, or, oh, look, there's a banana, I'm just going to take it, So then we don't realize that these impulses come from a real physical pathway in the brain that we built when we were young. So a lot of people say, oh, well, you shouldn't be still stuck in those old childhood loops. But everyone is stuck in old childhood loops because our brain is designed to be wired in childhood. And when I say childhood, so a monkey's childhood is 2 years long. A mouse's childhood is 2 months long. A human's childhood is like 2 decades long. So a lot of people, after the 2 decades, they think, oh, I ignore all that old shit and I figured out everything. But yeah, so you didn't. And so what happens is all that wiring that you built in those first 2 decades, they are real physical pathways in your brain. And they motivate you to repeat a behavior without knowing why. And when you repeat that behavior, it's not a conscious verbal thought. It's electricity in your brain is flowing into the biggest pathway. So the only solution is to build a new pathway. And the way to build a new pathway is to repeat a new behavior. But it's hard to build a new behavior because that's like trying to get all this electricity instead of going into a river is going into like a little soda straw or something. So that's a skill that we have to learn and everybody needs to learn.
Right. I absolutely love the correlation of the kids in various scenarios because I've dealt with very interesting adults who have that you can tell who as a kid was allowed to get away with things and with no repercussion or clear consequences. People get stuck in a pattern of real scenario where a person that I work in close proximity with has a very hard time taking accountability. And with every confrontation of sort about the behavior, always ends up with a perpetual victimhood, right? And
and the culture today supports that.
This is somebody that really should not be in that mindset. This is a 40-plus-year-old. So, and it's something that permeates in everything this person does, unfortunately, and they don't see the error in their ways. And as much as I kind of love to hold up mirrors, it's become an exhausting thing for me where I feel like I'm back maybe where her parent or their parent was, where it's like, just leave her alone. She's going to do whatever she wants to do kind of a thing. And it's for somebody who may have, whether they're an only child or whatever family dynamic was that was present to establish, maybe this behavioral pattern. How can a person recognize, first and foremost, because the first thing you have to do is recognize that these patterns are not coincidences and that they actually do really exist. And it borders on being self-centered. How important is it for a person to recognize the pattern in their behavior and to try to rewire?
Well, it is a challenge. And especially, the culture really supports the idea of blaming all your outcomes on someone else rather than looking at your own pattern. And it's hard because the verbal part of your brain is separate from the action, emotional part of your brain. So when you're having these unwanted behaviors, you're not thinking them in words. So you say, oh, I wasn't thinking that, And so it's so easy to see the unwanted patterns in other people. So very few people are wanting to even look in themselves. And so then we're often told, well, you should get help. But often when you get help, they just want to build a bond with you by reinforcing and affirming whatever you're saying. And so then the pattern just gets more entrenched. If you want to change, they'll help you. But if you don't want to change, they'll just allow you to lead down that finger pointing habit. So the bottom line is just for everyone to say it in themselves. If I don't have to find fault with myself or blame all the problems in the world, but just to say, well, what if I just want to be 1% happier? What can I do differently that I have the power over that will make my life better? And when you start focusing on your own behavior, then you could find little things that you could change that will lower the tension, lower the temperature. And even though your conscious verbal brain can think of 100 reasons why it's their fault, that if you only focus on how they will change, then you're a powerless victim and you'll just be in the same loop all the time, as long as you're focusing on what other people should do. But if you focus on what you have the power to do, and it, not just, again, not to say that you're doing everything wrong, but just to say, what if I could just change one thing to be happier?
Right. That is very important. I think that's personal. In nursing, we call it personal knowing, just looking within. Like, okay, what part am I playing in this relationship happening this way? What part am I playing in this conversation having this tonality? I don't know why it's difficult, but it's difficult for a lot of people. And it's also difficult for some people to listen to understand instead of listening to respond. I don't know where that conditioning came from, but it's part of almost like a deflection or defense. If the smallest mirror is held up, like, oh, hello, have you looked at the side of your face? This is how it's presenting. People tend to deflect and get defensive. What can you attribute that to, Dr. Loretta?
Because with a lot of people, if you take 1% of the blame, then everybody will dump all the blame on you because you're the only one that that stood up and took 1% of the blame, right? So that's maybe an experience that they had in their past. So I guess you could start with an advance agreement to say, okay, let's make a deal. If I take 1% of the blame and you take 1% of the blame, and then let's drop it.
An agreement works. When everybody's accountable, things tend to move along well. Going back to the get help part, I please want you to elaborate on that. So people, I don't want to use the word rely because it sounds dependent. People go into therapy of sort to get help. Like you said, get help, right? So, and you said if you're willing to change, the help will be provided. However, if you're not, the conversation will just lead down the path that pleases you. Is this an important aspect of whether psychotherapy or talk therapy or whatever therapy it is, for the practitioner to be open and honest?
Excuse me, I said they will lead down the path to please you. They'll put pleasing you above change, because if they put change first, you won't come back.
That defeats the purpose.
I know. Yup.
That defeats the purpose. And that's crazy.
Yeah, I know. But a lot of people don't come back as soon as it gets uncomfortable. So they say, well, we can't focus on change until we build connection. How much connection do you need to build before you get into the uncomfortable stuff? You have to see how much the person is willing. I'll give you a good example of how much people don't want the truth. Okay. Let's say it's something more factual, like cancer. So let's say you're like a cancer doctor and somebody has cancer. And so it's your job to give them the truth. But in a lot of cultures, it's considered like you just don't tell a person that they have cancer because it's too cruel. You just lie to them, And so in the United States, usually the doctor tells you the truth And then often they blame the doctor because they didn't say it in a nice enough way, as if there could possibly be any good way to say it. But I don't know. I sort of suspected, like my father, when he had cancer, they didn't say it. They said it was something else until a week before he died. And I thought that it was kind of merciful. Like, people don't want to know the truth, But then, like you said, if you're in a situation where you're not going to die in a week and you need the facts so that you can make better decisions.
Yeah, maybe it's a human thing, but it makes a lot of sense why I find myself in situations that I find myself. I think we've developed this thing with the human experience of beating about the bush. And it makes sense why people don't like kind of the straightforward conversation. And just those examples you gave make so much sense why, and I like, my circle is very small. I'm very, very much a straight shooter, but not a lot of people appreciate that. But the people who do take it for what it is, not an attack, a feedback, an observation, and they make changes according to what fits them, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm of the firm belief, again, this is not to project this on anybody, that if you truly do care about a person, you will pour into them in a way that actually betters them, not criticizing, right? But being honest. So there's a level of deceit, I guess I'm seeing in this, where somebody actively either pays, whether in money or in time, to go seek help of any kind, and you're not willing to hear it. Who are you lying to? Giving feedback to the people that I know in my ecosystem is one thing, okay? I don't believe in criticizing people or breaking people down. However, I may point things out, hey, we're human, is the human experience, where I know is going to be received. When it's not going to be received, I don't waste my time. I just, whatever. So I think the struggle is where somebody either knows enough that there could be a problem, or they will refer to see somebody because there's a problem. However, they invest time and energy and money to be lied to because they're not willing to hear the truth. I think I struggle a little bit with that. Because there's a part of the brain telling them that maybe this person is kind of coddling you in a sense.
Yeah, well, it's also, the therapist only knows the side of the story that you tell them. And how many times, even it happens with a child, where they come and say, this person did all these mean things to me. And you think, is that really the whole story? But if you ask, well, what did you do to them? Then either the child gets upset, you're not on my side, you always take everybody else's side, it's so unfair. So there's no, it's hard, right?
Perfect sense. Because they tell the story how they feel like telling the story, is not the whole truth. And who doesn't want empathy? Who doesn't want people on their side to believe them and support them?
Yes, exactly.
Perfect sense.
Yeah. My daughter is grown up and she's a mother, and I still I just think, anything I say is going to be interpreted as I'm not on her side, so I just have to agree with her on everything.
That's a very, very delicate balance, the mother-daughter relationship, that relationship. Why do you think it's so tender in relating it to the brain?
Oh, well, because your neural pathways are built when you're young. And so children are born helpless and they need the support of their parents to survive. And yet, if your parents tie your shoes for you when you're 20 years old, then you're not going to survive out in the world. So it's the parent's job to stop being so helpful at some point so that the child could develop skills. And that's painful for every child to make that transition. And a lot of times they make it through anger. They really want you to tie their shoes. They don't want to have to tie them themselves and maybe fail and get frustrated. So then they have to get angry at you to push you away in order to stand on their own 2 feet. So it's hard.
Do you think it's just, in your experience, I know you mentioned your daughter. I don't know if you have experience parenting a boy. Do you think it's more delicate with the mother-daughter relationship as opposed to a mother-son relationship?
Oh, it's always hard because then when your son grows up, if they have a wife, then really their survival depends on getting along with their wife. So they really have to put that first for their own survival. So you still have to take a back seat. And when you talked about saying the truth to people, I'm just thinking of a really painful story. So many, many years ago, my mother, you're going to die. So my mother told her sister that her sister was dressing in a very shabby way. And it was an embarrassment, basically. And my mother was giving her old clothes to her sister so that she wouldn't look so shabby. And my mother literally thought she was being nice and expected me to take her side. So I didn't really get this whole thing. I sort of ran as far as I could. But I have this cousin who then was in on the loop and contacted me 20 years later and told me the whole story. Because I didn't know why my mother and her mother were on bad terms, I thought it was a different reason. I knew my mother was hard to get along with, but there was also more to the story that my cousin didn't know, I think. So this is, now you see why I watch videos about monkeys.
So that is a typical older sister thing to do. Was your mother older?
Yeah, good point. Exactly. Not just older, but sort of had to raise her, know.
Yes.
Although when I say she had to raise her, that's the story I was given, but my cousin was given a different story.
I think that is just the sister dynamic. And I find this in my own experience. I find this in not all sister relationships. There are just certain sisters that are nutty. And the reason they're nutty is not because they don't have the best intention, but because they become accustomed and used to being on a pedestal as being championed as the responsible one. They overstep, and when they're called out on being overstepping, they feel insulted and take things personally. Okay, personal experience. So talking about the brain and childhood, how you grow up, it's kind of like when something is reinforced over and over and over, and
yes.
You are the best, everybody knows it, you're responsible, you're smart, you're beautiful,
but they're only the best as long as the other siblings take yes. And then in their adult life, they have no other way to be the best because that is their old habit.
That's it. And they fall back into that old habit. And when the younger is like, okay, excuse me, adult here, relax. There's just overreaching, okay? Like sending the clothes. A recommendation to maybe update your closet. Maybe let's go shopping, right? You sending your used clothes, you're basically saying I have no inhibition in fashion. So it can be insulting. But you could have asked the mother and she did the best thing a sister could have done, right? So I think this is where it is important to listen. I had this conversation recently with a coworker who I really do respect, as she's older and, she's supported me in many things. And we had a conversation so I'm Nigerian. Respect is very big in our culture, and she's also Nigerian. Very recently, I can't believe I'm talking about this right now. So whenever I'm interacting with her, I'm very conscious especially when other people are around. So if I feel she was too harsh or she could have relaxed a bit, if she's in the heat of the moment, I let her. When we have privacy, I talk to her.
Oh,
the same thing, she's done that to me before. However, very recently, in the heat of the moment, I wasn't even heated. I wasn't heated until somebody said something. Even before then, she said something offensive in front of a lot of people. And I didn't think it was funny. And I repeated what she said. I said, are you serious? And she repeated it again. And she even made it worse. At that point, I'm like, okay, we'll have a conversation later. However, things snowball, okay? In that instance, I could have shot back. I could have said something. I could have made that conversation much worse. However, when I had our audience one-on-one, I told her, I need you to understand something. Respect goes both ways. I choose to respect you. I've never done anything to not respect you in front of other people. What you did today was not acceptable, and I can easily take my respect back. This is what you did. This is what you did. This is what you did. She decided to focus on her point, the point she wanted to make. Are you listening to me? And I think that's something that all the sisters or all the siblings or all the people within the community, my community especially, they tend to do. Listen to the person trying to tell you, hey, that's rectifying a relationship. If I'm telling you this was hurtful, I did not like what was said, how it was said when it was said, is it possible for you to acknowledge that I am saying I was hurt as opposed to doubling down? So what would make a person, we're talking about the brain, what would make a person ignore, whether it's the situation with your aunt and your mom or the situation that I just presented, ignore what is actively being communicated for a resolution of sort and focus on the point they made or the point they were trying to make, or even making excuses. Well, somebody else has said this in the past. You know, this person says it all the time. I don't care what this person says all the time. I'm talking about what she said to me in this space and time. That person hasn't said that to me directly, and especially not in a tense situation. What would make a person do that?
Well, habits are so deep. And again, we're not conscious of them. They're just big pathways in the brain that got big from past use.
Right.
So to make a new habit, you have to repeat a new behavior a lot. And it's hard because you don't know how to activate the new behavior. So this is what, if I may quote Dr. Phil, he says, you have to ask what you want. So if you want her to think different, that's too big. So if you want her to respect you, if you could think of a very specific example, like, this is what I'd like to hear you say, or this is what I'd like for you to do, and make it something very small and very specific and say it without anger, and then just accept that you're going to have to say it about 10 times. And each time you say it, you have to reward her with a smile or hug or, you know, a reward so that she connects doing the right thing with a good feeling rather than, oh, you idiot, you know, how could you not know that what you're supposed to say is this? Because then, you know.
Yeah, I see that.
It's sort of a cliche that when men and women fight, you know, is like when you ask for something, if you ask in anger and then you're mad at them for not having already done it, then they're in a no-win situation. But if you ask like, oh, you should have known that I wanted that, but rather you just have to ask for something very specific and then show gratitude and then know that you're going to have to repeat that.
I don't think acknowledging somebody's feelings should take that much work.
Well, it shouldn't, but I'll check. Let me use the example with my mother and the clothes. I think my mother didn't fit in the clothes anymore. So she wanted to give them to somebody. And she thought, rather than giving them to a stranger, why don't I give them to my sister who looks so shabby? And the reason she looks so shabby is because her husband is cruel and doesn't give her any money. So my mother thought she was being nice because of, like, I'm sympathizing. You have this cruel husband who doesn't let you buy clothes. And why should I give them to a stranger when I could give them to you? So every brain focuses on the side of the story that puts them in the one-up position.
So are we selfish by nature?
Yeah, yeah. And everyone says we shouldn't, but they see the selfishness in others and they don't see their own selfishness. And now in academic psychology, they try to make it sound like we're all born altruistic and something has gone wrong. This is just not true. And in the monkey research, there was like 100 years of biology that showed that animals were competitive. And suddenly that research has been wiped off the table. And now a young person can only get their degree if they go along with this idea that monkeys are cooperative and peaceful and altruistic. And the new monkey videos just show monkeys cooperating. Most of them do. And it's just a lie.
Yeah, the human brain, how do we make it work for us, I guess? So we don't expect it all the time. However, when we are facing these challenges, how do we harvest those happy hormones without an expectation? Because I'm thinking dopamine right now, and, even scrolling, will give you that happy hit. How do we do it without obsessing over it to the point of detriment?
So in today's world, this scrolling has come to be blamed for everything. But so the brain runs from pain, and everyone has their habit of, like I said, it could be this habit or this habit or this habit. Like whenever I feel bad, this is the thing I do. So scrolling on the phone is one thing because so here in the animal world, they only run from threats when the threat is actually there.
Okay.
But the big human brain can imagine threat all the time. So we could feel threatened all the time. So the only way we could get ourselves to stop feeling threatened is to think about something else. So the scrolling is this way of thinking about something else to distract us from this things that we don't want to think about. Okay. And then there's the reward value. So if I walk into a coffee shop and the coffee smells so good, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is great. But if I stay in the coffee shop, after 5 minutes, I don't even smell the coffee anymore. So it's like the same, like if you go to your phone and you're like, oh, this is exciting, but like then it stops feeling good after a short time. But the next time I feel bad, then going to that coffee shop or that phone or that video game or that other bad habit, that's the way you've wired your brain. That's the way it knows to feel good, even though it never lasts. Yeah. So we have to manage our brain because we can not create as much misery as we create in ourselves. And we can find safer ways to distract ourselves so that we don't create more pain in the long run. But that's all hard. It's not as if there's, like this metaphysical view that there's this pool of happy chemicals and you can just tap into them. A lot of people are selling that, but life doesn't work that way.
Right. So a personal question to you, Dr. Loretta. Have you been in a place where you had to rewire your brain concerning anything that you felt was cemented in your childhood?
Yeah, sure.
How was that process?
Well, it feels awful. So first, I had therapy and I was upset when they said I was creating the problem, and with my own thoughts. I found it very upsetting. And then when I slowly thought, what can I do different? And I didn't even have the energy to do this until my kids grew up and I retired from my job. And it's like, okay, when I feel bad in this situation, what is an alternative behavior? And I came up with an alternative, and then it felt bad. And I said, okay, this is normal. It's going to feel bad at first. And then after a while, it just gets to be my new normal.
Okay. Was it worth it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because once you think, well, if I'm creating my own pain just because of some random experience in the past, why should I spend the rest of my life creating my own pain?
Yeah. Right. So for people that are running away from facing that reality and they're listening to us talk today, what is the one thing I usually ask for golden nuggets? What is a golden nugget or a few golden nuggets you can leave for them? So anybody listening to us, whether they realize it or not, a pattern, whatever, but they're looking to confront and the reconditioning and kind of go through a reconditioning process, what would be the things that you would say to them?
So the bottom line, the challenge for everyone is to find healthy ways to feel good.
Okay.
And I don't mean feel good, like I said, some high. And I don't mean feel good every minute of every day.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how could I feel good for 3 minutes? And how can I make a habit of noticing when I feel bad and giving myself 3 minutes of that thing I like?
Right. Is 3 minutes enough?
Well, if you can spare 20 minutes, 20 minutes is best.
Okay.
But 3 minutes is enough to at least stop you from feeding the fire.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yes. Great. Thank you. So, Dr. Loretta, anybody listening to us getting intrigued by this conversation, they want to reach out, work with you, or follow your journey, how can they find you?
So my website is innermammalinstitute.org, innermammalinstitute.org. And I have a free 5-day happy chemical jumpstart. A person can get 1 email on each of 5 chemicals, 1 email a day that explains what turns on each of the happy chemicals and how we can build our power over them.
Beautiful. So are you on LinkedIn or any social media platform?
Yes, I'm on all the usual platforms.
Beautiful. So we'll make all of that available in the show notes. So you don't have to write it or try to remember it. Just click it and it will take you right there. So thank you so much, Dr. Loretta. This was such a great conversation. It was really insightful.
Thank you so much.
It was really insightful. Yeah.
I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Let us know what you think. Yeah, the human brain is complex yet simple at the same time. That's what I got from it. So I don't know what you got from it, but let us know what you think. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Unshelling Medicine Podcast. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Altruistic Scribe on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We share additional tips, updates, and health-related content that you won't want to miss. Have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes? Reach out to us at altruisticscribeco.com. We're always eager to hear from our listeners and tackle the health topics that matter most to you. Until next time, stay healthy and take care.